What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to our Week 14 edition of the NFL Weekly here on the network, where we break down everything the NFL has to offer from a betting point of view. And yes, that is right, folks. We are at Week 14 already. Time is fleeting in this NFL season. But we're getting down to that, that critical stage of the season. Hopefully you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving, great holiday. You stayed safe, got some family, got some naps in. But with me to break down this week and going forward, my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I am doing great. There's a little bit of chill for San Diego in the air today when I was walking the dogs even this morning, and it's a little chilly right now. And folks, you're running out of shopping days, so you better get your collective acts together and get everything done. Get the tree up and get the lights on and the decorations and all that good stuff, because it is the holidays. And for some of the teams, it seems like their stockings are already getting filled and there's a lot of stuff under the trees. And then for some teams, there's big lumps of silver and black coal and nothing else.
Yes, we will, of course, get to that silver and black debacle in a bit. We, of course, going to look at mainly focus on the AFC West and NFC East from betting points of view for those games. Obviously, as I said, the Thanksgiving games always kind of are on the forefront, and we kind of expected it to be a lean day. And overall, outside of, ironically, I think the game that we all thought was going to be the worst ended up being the best. The Lions and the Bears, unfortunately for Matt Eberflus. I don't know if he believes he can still bring that timeout with him to his next job, but he will need a new job. He, unfortunately, of course, has been fired after, again, one of the more perplexing game-ending decisions to not call a timeout, and then I think to double down on it. And what I really think ended up getting him fired mid-season was in the press conference, essentially saying, no, we played that the right way. It's almost like, dude, hey, come on, bud. Like, even if you don't believe it, you can't say that for the first time in the Bears, 106 years, I believe is what it was. They have fired a coach mid-season. Of course, that was really the only game that was really close. Green Bay dominated the frozen Dolphins, and the Giants are the Giants. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on the Thanksgiving games and Week 13 overall?
Yeah, that Chicago game, let me tell you, when you wonder what's going on the sidelines. It's just such a mental meltdown. It's almost as if the guy just completely, his wires didn't cross, his wires disconnected. Mm-hmm. My gosh, they were there. It was theirs for the taking. And then, and then you get tackled or you get sacked and you lose the yardage. And Chicago has just been one of the major disappointments, I think, compared to what we thought they might be during preseason, as we talked about the start of the season. And wow, they're at a big hill that they've got to climb to correct everything over there. And I don't see it turning around next year. Anytime you do these coaching turnarounds like this, it doesn't work out for the better. Ask me for the last 20 years how that's gone for an organization such as the Raiders, who have not had the same coach for more than 2 seasons since 2002. It just doesn't work. So there's got to be consistency there, and it's just a shame. Other than that, we had the big Black Friday game where it was the old AFC or the AFL Western Division rivals, the Raiders and the Chiefs. It wasn't a bad game if you look at the scoreboard, but we've all been watching the Chiefs just barely squeak by, pull rabbits out of hats, and a lot of handkerchiefs out of their sleeves and things. They kind of did that again this past weekend. It was kind of a little bit of that and kind of a little bit the Raiders just can't execute. The Raiders just haven't, they're okay. O'Donnell had 340 yards, which is, not bad at all. But hey, you only got 17 points. Only 17 points, and and the Chiefs got 19. So that's what's going to happen. But I mean, the Chiefs they don't have a very easy schedule going the rest of the way, and the playoff pictures are looking pretty good. Other things that I came away with for the week was that hit on Trevor Lawrence, of course. You can't ignore that. You can't not talk about it. I'm glad that the guy was thrown out of the game. I'm glad he's been suspended. And, somebody who is a moderate football fan, and they're saying, well, gosh, what do you do? What do you do? What are they going to do? I says, until they start putting it's kind of like as an employer. And in the position I used to have in the corporate world, I was in charge of some safety items. And the deal was, if I didn't implement the right things, or if I was made aware of something and I didn't do my job to make it right, guess what? I'm personally liable.
Mm-hmm.
So will there come a point, and it's kind of not just rhetorical, it is a question to you. Do you think there's ever going to be a point where there is personal liability out there?
I think we had, I don't think so anymore after the settlement. And I don't know the legalese of it. I don't know the exacts, and to be honest, I don't really want to know. That's not the type of football information I want to dive into, but I would have to imagine with that settlement, on the NFL side, they had to give up at least a pretty good amount of their quote unquote any liability that they do have. And it was, we've seen some hits and it's like, don't like the hit, but he slid late or this or that. This one was forearm first. The dive was well after he was going for the slide. It was as bad as it gets. Obviously, the only thing that I really had a problem with was sometimes I do think these referees need to understand the context of the game. The foul ended up it ended up offsetting because the referee then threw a flag on the Jaguar who hit the guy. And I understand, look, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. But again, let's put ourselves in the context of what just happened. It's probably best that he just put two hands and threw him down or whatever. It could have been a lot worse. Really bad 3-game suspension. The apology, he apologized. Some of the other things he had talked about, it is what it is. That's if he's going through some of those things, that's his thing that he has to deal with. But it was a bad look. But on the NFL side, I just think that settlement, and again, I don't know the exact specifics of it, but I have to imagine they've probably gotten out from underneath that personal liability, at least in terms of that side of it. But that's just my thought on that.
And then playing devil's advocate, I also heard somebody make a pretty valid point too. They said, let's throw that one out because that was such an egregious offense right there. But, and I've seen this, I've noticed this, you can watch old Patrick Mahomes take a few steps, take a few steps, and he jukes people because he starts to drop his hip like he's going to slide, and he stands up and takes a few more steps, and that defender backs up. You don't hit Patrick Mahomes. And so they really are really conscious and aware of what's going on when it's at. So again, there's only so much you can do to make the game completely safe. It is a violent sport. But we'll see what happens here on out. But I guarantee you in the offseason, there's going to be more talks about, then we've got to make this even more like a flag football thing, but it's interesting. That discussion's so far from over. Trevor Lawrence out for the season with his $275,000 contract. You got to protect him. But where does that leave Doug Pederson, the coach, and Trent Blake, the general manager for Jacksonville? My goodness, I got to believe it's not going to be a happy holiday season for those guys.
Yeah, I'm personally, and I like Doug, obviously, very special place in my heart for Doug Peterson. Personally, I'm surprised he's still the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shad Khan is a very, very rich man, and I don't think I mean, he's fired coaches after 1 year. He has fired coaches mid-season. I have to imagine a change is coming. I think now it's a moot point. Like you don't
finish the season.
Yeah, you don't now. Mac Jones goes out there and does what and then they lose. Okay, now that just seems a little petty to me. It's almost like, okay, look, it's probably best for the franchise as well, just to tank without tanking. You can still say, no, we went out there and we tried. But you know what? Mac Jones just, unfortunately, look, he's a backup and he's not a great backup. They played valiantly in that game. I think Mac Jones, he's a good backup.
They were close.
Yeah, they pushed real hard against that team, and I think maybe a bigger indictment of what's going on in Houston. Houston's, I think, in some trouble there. They're very lucky they're in their division. They are, but they might be looking at a home playoff game, and that might be all she wrote for them unless they start figuring things out. But you're right. The Patrick Mahomes situation, I want to go back. I feel like it was the Carolina game. He was running to kind of run out the clock or, end things. And he gets on that sideline and he kind of slows up and you see the defender kind of hesitate. And then he kicks it back up and goes forward. You're right. Like, obviously the Lawrence hit, it's a bad example, but overall, I mean, Kenny Pickett did it in college, I believe, with Pitt. And everyone was like, oh, look at this. And I'm over here like, he's going to get someone killed. And I'm not saying that this is the after effect of something that happened in the college game 4 years ago, but there is a situation now where defenders either have to play too passive or they are deemed too aggressive, and that's very difficult to be in. And again, this is a conversation that needs to be had in terms of what the quarterbacks need to do, but nothing to do with the Trevor Lawrence hit. I think the Trevor Lawrence hit was egregious. I think the 3-game suspension was warranted. I think even D'Amico Ryans after the game kind of got in front of it and said, look, we don't coach that. So very interesting to see that. One other thing I will add on to week 12 or week 13, I should say, the Niners, I think we can officially, the coroner, let's pronounce them dead. Christian McCaffrey, and I don't mean to laugh or whatever. It just seems like we're in this situation a lot with him, but he's a PCL, which of all the CLs, the PCL is by far the least that you have to deal with. It's technically a 6-week injury, but look, they're not making the playoffs more than likely. And I believe Jordan Mason is also, I don't know about the year, but he's going to be out for a bit. So their top 2 running backs done. Yeah. Okay. So, and we are at that point of the season where it doesn't take much to end your season. And obviously, it was a little difficult to see them, try and go up to Buffalo. That was, if you want to bring an alien down and show them the difference between New York and California, that's what you show them. The Bills were ready to roll. And unfortunately, I do wonder if questions are asked about whether or not Christian McCaffrey should have been on that field.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we saw.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
he sat out the first 8 weeks.
Yeah,
he sat out the first 8 weeks. The guy's injured, and it's like you send him out in tennis shoes or even worse, men's dress shoes, and put him on the ice at a hockey rink and say, run.
Yeah.
Why would you put him out there? As soon as I saw it, they're not going to play him. They're not going to play him. And when I saw him go out on the field, I thought, I can't believe that there's that big of an absence of common sense on the sidelines or in the boxes or in the owner's box, or in the ownership. How do you send that guy out there like that when he just started getting healthy? And there he is, gone again. That's a lot of money.
And again, like we can sit here and, people might say, oh, hindsight's 2020, but I mean, look at the field conditions, folks. Like, just watch the first 5 minutes of that game. No one had footing. I mean, the fact that Deebo Samuel had like 2, 25, 30-yard either kick or punt returns. I mean, that was a minor miracle. It was very, very interesting, but I do think the Niners, unfortunately, are done. And this kind of, now you look at the layout in the NFC, and I know the NFC North teams are there, but There are two very, very good teams at the top, and I think there's a bit of a gap between everyone else. And that doesn't mean that, we're guaranteed to see Philadelphia, Detroit in the NFC Championship game. But at this point, I do think you would be very surprised to see either Green Bay or Minnesota come out, because I don't think anybody in that NFC South or NFC West can compete with those other two teams. So it's really interesting to kind of see the layout of the league right now, even with Buffalo on the flip side. Buffalo and Kansas City kind of, after what the Eagles kind of exposed with the Ravens, it's almost like we have four really good teams, but we have
Ravens are in a world of hurt. I think the Ravens are not in good place, not in a good place right now.
I agree.
And that's my only other Week 13 note is I'm going to put the name out there and get your reaction, Justin Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't want to put Jake Elliott in the same category of where Justin Tucker was at his peak, because he wasn't, but Jake Elliott was very close. And you kind of asked me about this, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was the Washington game that he missed, I think, 2 field goals and an extra point. And again, it was, this I think has only happened twice in his 7-year career. So I'm going to just hope that it was a blip in the radar. Unfortunately for Justin Tucker, we're now looking at possibly the rule rather than the exception. And it's been a really rough year for Justin Tucker. I feel for the guy, but I'm obviously not a kicker, and I can't even imagine, but I do think a lot of it's mental. And once you kind of, something up here is either kneading away at you, where you got in baseball terms, we call it the yips. You can't do what you've been doing for the last X number of years at a very high level for whatever reason. And I'll be honest, people might say age, but I look at like the Morton Anderson, who is out there at like 55. Like I don't see it, unfortunately. And again, he's not missing short. He's not missing these things. He's missing wide. And that's the big issue. I think going for Justin Tucker. But I'll tell you, the kickers for the last 5 or 6 weeks, they went from being one of the more automatic things in football to nothing is guaranteed anymore. Everyone outside of Boswell has had a moment. Even Younghoe Koo, he's struggled. So yeah, everyone is, I think, struggling in the kicking game. But
the Ravens lost by 5.
Yeah.
It's 2 field goals. Guess what? Ravens win by 1.
Yep. Yeah. It's although I will say, just as an Eagle fan, I will say that I do think if he would have made those 2 field goals, I don't think it's that simple, just because to get to 24-19, I don't want to call it a garbage time touchdown, but it was a pretty late touchdown. So just, I do think that might have been defended differently, but you're right. It cost his team a good chance to at least compete in that last drive. And that was, I think, the big issue for the Eagles, or for the Ravens, I should say. But time to turn our attention towards Week 14. This is the final week of buys, and if you're a fantasy football player, this is Buy-mageddon, as we call it. 6 teams are on a bye, including those Baltimore Ravens, the Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the New England Patriots, and mercilessly, the Washington Commanders will get a bye week as well. It'll take some time to hopefully take a deep breath. They did get a nice win over Tennessee, but they're going to need to have a nice run in towards the end. We are going to start on the NFC East side of things with the biggest spread of the week, and it is the Philadelphia Eagles, the aforementioned Philadelphia Eagles. They will be hosting the Carolina Panthers, the somewhat resurgent Carolina Panthers. The Eagles are going to be 12.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 46. Obviously, I'll get this one started. I've been impressed with the Panthers lately, and not to the point of, oh my goodness, don't let this team, or even looking ahead, like, oh, this is a team that'll be a playoff team next year, blah, blah, blah. Not really, but from where they were at week 5, 6, or 7 to where they are now, I don't know how you couldn't be encouraged, especially when it comes to Bryce Young. I don't know if Bryce Young is going to be a Hall of Famer or a Pro Bowler or, whatever, or a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But I think what I've seen over the last 4 or 5 weeks, there's enough there for me to say this guy, I think, is a serviceable NFL quarterback plus, or, and that's kind of his floor. I think he has got it figured out. Dave Canales has kind of, I don't want to say righted the ship again, because they've lost games, but it hasn't been as embarrassing. And I mean, this past weekend was a bit of a heartbreaker. It just seemed like they just couldn't get the job done. And of course, you go back to the Kansas City game. And then on the flip side, obviously the Eagles might not be, I mean, Detroit's obviously has a longer winning streak, but the Eagles have been very, very impressive on both sides of the ball during their winning streak. The one thing I will say, and the reason why I am going to take Carolina and the points here, 2 reasons. First reason, Eagles have not scored in the first quarter in 11 of their 12 games, whatever it is. They've only scored in first quarter once, not touchdowns, not scored any points in one of their games so far this year. They start way too slow for them to cover a big spread like this, in my mind. Now, if they come out and they drop 14 in the first quarter, okay, they might cover. But from what I've seen, might not happen. And then on the other side of it, the Eagles aren't a offense that's going to afford a game 8 to 10 possessions for each team. The Eagles want to run the ball down your throats, and they're going to try and take up time. They want to win time of possession. I don't think there's a lot of possessions in this game. I think the Eagles get up by 10, and it's just kind of that moment of like, when you're a little bit bigger than a kid, you just hold their head back and they're swinging at you and you're just keeping your distance, just kind of big brothering them. I think that's what we see here. I also do see the under. The Eagles defense has been incredible. And we talk about the big guys, and even, some of the guys who have come on, including Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I mean, Quinion Mitchell, there is only one cornerback in the league that has had 450 snaps and has not given up a touchdown. It's Quinion Mitchell. He's been incredible. Cooper DeJean, incredible tackle against Derrick Henry that really kind of sealed the game. But the one guy, and I brought his name up, but it's never been just by himself, and to give him, Zach Bond has been the signing of the defensive season. If it wasn't for Saquon Barkley, he would be the signing of the season. He has been incredible. This was a guy who was a special teamer and was a backup outside linebacker. Vic Fangio said, nope, he's my inside linebacker. Beat out Nakobe Dean, who still does start, but beat him out. And Devin White is gone now because of what Zach Bond has brought to the table. He does it all. He can force fumbles. He can intercept balls. He can get sacks, tackles. I think this defense is flying high. I think they get the job done, and we stay under the 46. I think 46 is a bit high for this Carolina offense against the Eagles defense, but I do think Carolina keeps it within the 12.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. I like that call on both sides. I really think Carolina, they're not going to come out like you said. They're not going to stress Philadelphia. They're not going to run up scores on anybody, but Philadelphia is not going to run it up either. They're going to play blue collar football. And a slight chance of rain, not a lot of rain, but just a slight chance. And of course, that always messes up footing and the ability to catch. So I do like Philadelphia's defense, the way they've been playing. And if the tackle you're referring to was the one time, probably in the last 3 years, I've seen somebody do a textbook tackle. Came up on him, put his shoulder down, wrapped his thighs, got him up in the air, and dropped him. And I'm screaming in my house, that's the tackle. That's how you tackle. That's how you tackle. It was fantastic. And again, Carolina, they're making small steps in the right direction. They're not going to have enough this week, but do they cover the 12.5? Yes, they will. Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley, give him the ball. Yeah. Just let him eat up the clock, eat up the yardage, get into the end zone, get him in field goal range, and then let the defense do their jobs. So Carolina will keep it within 10 probably. And I like that call. I don't think 12.5 is realistic. And I do think, like you, it's going to be under on this one.
Yeah, that was an incredible tackle. I saw someone post like there are high school defensive coaches who are crying tears of joy right now watching that.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. It was a textbook tackle on a guy who you need to tackle textbookly, if that's a word, textbookly. But anyways, moving on to the Giants side of things, kind of the opposite side of the NFC East spectrum. As bad as it gets, that is the New York Giants. They are going to be hosting the New Orleans Saints. Saints are going to be 5-point favorites on the road. The over-under sits at a paltry 41. Obviously, there are not too many teams the New Orleans Saints can get 5 points against and be on the road for. And this is one, I mean, even the other side of it, I don't know if the weather will be an issue, but this is a dome team going outdoors to the Northeast, and they're still getting 5 points. This shows you how bad the Giants have been. And if you need any kind of reassurances or anything like that, you could have just watched the Thanksgiving game. But of course, I wouldn't want to subject that to anyone, especially on a day when you're eating so much food. The Giants are as bad as it gets. The only team I believe that can kind of like hold a candle to how bad they are is, well, their roommate. But that's for another day. It's really bad in New York. The Giants have really nothing to play for, and they're in a situation now. They're in that quote unquote cap hell with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, or Tommy DeVito. It doesn't seem to matter. His team does not score points. I like New Orleans -5, and it's not anything that the New Orleans Saints are going to do. I think it's just how bad the Giants are. I do think we go over 41, and mainly because I think New Orleans defense can either get a pick six or flip field position and make things very easy on the New Orleans offense. I wouldn't be surprised to see New Orleans get 28-31 themselves, and then we're just chasing 10 from the Giants, which garbage time may take care of that. And it's not like the New Orleans Saints defense is out of control good. So they might, kind of blindly find their way on a good punt return or something, get in a field goal range. I will say, though, as bad as things are with the Giants, and I'm almost positive he's going to lose his job, but I really think Brian Daboll's a good head coach. I mean, he took that team 2 years ago to the playoffs. He took Daniel Jones. He got the most out of Daniel Jones, and unfortunately, hindsight might be bad. Like that playoff run with Daniel Jones playing so well might have actually been a bit of a curse because they ended up signing him. But I really do think Brian Daboll's a good head coach. Unfortunately, I think he's going to lose his job regardless. But yeah, give me New Orleans -5 and over 41. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I look at this, the certain stats that I like to watch on a game like this. Now, New Orleans doesn't play well on the road. I think they're 1-4 this year. However, with that said, Giants are 0-6 at home, and that includes 5 division losses. I mean, my goodness, you're right. They can't get worse. As again, I've said it before since we've done the podcast. Goes back to my old coach in high school who used to look at you every now and then and say, "You just got to practice to be that stupid." I mean, and that really applies here. You got to practice to be that bad. Derek Carr, if Derek Carr is on, and there's only supposed to be slight chance or it's rain as possible, but it was like 1%. So the weather's not going to be a factor in this one. And if Derek Carr comes out and he's got a chance to shine, he's had a couple good games this season. So watch for him to put up some yards. I think he's going to go, 28 points. I'm with you. No problem. Do I think the Giants are going to score? Yeah, maybe one in the first half, one in the second half, and that's it. But we'll go over 41 in this one. New Orleans covers, no problem. That's probably just good money to bet that one.
Yeah. And also, for your own sake, there's no need to watch this game. Even you, coach, there's no need. There's better things to do with your Sunday. I promise. Even if it is watch paint dry. But moving on to Monday Night Football, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be 5-point favorites on the road in Jerry's World it is Monday Night Football, so luckily the sun will be set by the time we kick off, and I'm sure all the wide receivers are happy about that involved. Look, I look at Cincinnati and I look at Joe Burrow and I'm reminded of Good Will Hunting. Good movie. I think it's a bit overrated. It's a good movie, not the greatest movie ever, but it's a good movie. And there's, of course, that iconic scene. I'm pretty sure it's Robin Williams, and he looks at Matt Damon. He says, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And it's just this very dramatic, and he has to hug him, and he starts crying. It's just, obviously, watch the movie. I'm not doing it justice. It's a very poignant part of the movie. But you kind of feel like that's where we are with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is having a MVP-like season and is already pretty much eliminated from the playoffs. They have scored 99 points in their past 3 games. They have not won any of them. I don't know what more you can say other than get to next year and get it figured out before then. But they have the quarterback there. It's not been Joe Burrow's fault. In this situation, though, I really do think it does line up for Cincinnati, and I feel like it's the same thing over and over again. Brandon makes excuses for Joe Burrow and tells you why this week is going to be different and why the Bengals are going to actually win. But anyways, humor me. 4.5, or I'm going to buy a half a point. So give me Cincinnati minus 4.5. I think they are able to get the job done. Dallas's defense has been good, no doubt about it. But I also do think this is an opportunity for Cincinnati's defense to kind of look around and go, hey, you know what? This is an offense that maybe we can keep under 30. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think Cincinnati will be able to cover this 4.5. Again, give me the half a point. Don't feel great about it. I do feel good about the over. 50, come on. What we've seen, and you know what? If Joe Burrow and this ends up being a 17-14 game, okay, that happens. But at some point, you do have to look at what the Bengals have been doing and the points that we've seen in their games, and you just have to look at 50 and go, we're going over again. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think that's a pretty safe bet, just what we've seen from both offense and defense from Cincinnati. It's going to be an interesting one. I do believe there's like an alternate Simpsons broadcast that might be worth the time to watch there. But yeah, this is a tough Monday Night Football game for us. 2 teams that have pretty much zero chance of making the playoffs. Raider Jim, your thoughts? Cincinnati favorites on the road against the Cowboys.
Yeah, there's that old sports adage that says there is no I in team. And I really believe in that myself. There's also no D in Cincinnati or the Bengals, no matter how you put it. There's no D. Okay, let's get that straight. Dallas, Cowboy fans, Cowboy faithful, don't get too excited. I get it. You're riding the winning streak of 2 games. You beat a kind of the up-and-coming Washington Commanders who had a couple stutter steps there. You took care of business with them. You beat the Giants, so I wouldn't get too excited. You finally won a game at home. Good for you. But this is a different game, and I think Joe Burrow is going to come into town and go off on this defense. I really, really do. And I'm thinking before the game, he might send everybody out of the locker room, all the coaches, and he might just look at the defense and say, let's not screw up this one, okay? I'm gonna put on a show. Don't screw it up. I think Cincinnati's just going to be thunder and lightning on Monday night. They've got the showcase. Why not? They're at Jerry's house. Jerry's the Cowboys will restart the new streak of losing in Jerry's house. And what we're hoping for is, you already said it, the sun's going to be down, and we just want the roof to stay intact. And if that happens, then it's going to be a great game on Monday night. But I think Cincinnati covers. Like you, I like a half a point on that, 4.5. We'll take it. And then the over 49.5 for sure. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one.
Yeah, it's I think Micah Parsons, and I like Micah Parsons, Penn State guy. He said, I don't know if it was like the post-game interview or the press conference, he said, yeah, we coming. And I don't know if anyone needed to explain to him that there's nowhere you're all dressed up with nowhere to go. So I don't know where you're going. But enjoy yourself. So yeah. But yeah, it's a sad state there in Jerry's world, and they deserve it. Anyways, moving on to the AFC West side of things. The game everyone's talking about, it is the Gruden Bowl. It is the Las Vegas Raiders heading to Tampa to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are going to be 6.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 46.5. Nobody talks Raider football before Mr. Martinez. So, Raider Jim, your thoughts, Raiders heading down south.
Yeah, here we are, the Raiders with 2 victories. They have matched, I think, who is it, the Giants on the season so far. So what do you say? We're the Giants of the AFC right now. Las Vegas Raiders. Aiden O'Connell, he's not bad. He's not the answer to everything. Antonio Pierce, I said it 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to keep saying it. Even if they win the game, the act is done. It's over. And they've got to bring in somebody who can really get the attention of the players. They got to get rid of all the cancers in the locker rooms. I'm not saying there is one now, but we had the Adams thing at the beginning of the season. I don't want to play here. I want to go. I'm tired of losing. Good for you. You got to go to the Jets. How'd that work out for you? You're going to be sitting in the same place the Raider players are come postseason. You're going to be at home in your Taco Bell in your house, enjoying the game. Tampa Bay has something to play for because they are not really a long shot, but they do have a shot to make the playoffs, but they got to play better. They've got to play more consistent. Baker's got to have a better game, and he couldn't have a better opportunity than to play the defense of the Las Vegas Raiders. So what's going to happen in this one? The Raiders are going to be okay and competitive offensively. Defensively, they're still going to screw up like they have a tendency to do. I think the Raiders, give me a 0.5 point. Raiders can cover at 7. I think they will cover at 7. I think it's going to be a 3 or 4 point game, something like that. Over under 46.5 points. There is a slight chance of rain, but just a very slight chance. The conditions down there, it could be a very good passing game for both guys. To see this go 27-23 or 24 wouldn't surprise me. That gives you 51 points. Even if you went a little bit higher than that. But I see, 28, 27. I see 24 for the Raiders. Give me the Raiders plus 7 in this one, and give me the over 46.5.
Perfect. I am so glad you took the over, because the people who said we copy each other homework would have been screaming, because I have the Raiders plus 7 as well. But I do have the under. But we'll start with the spread side of it. Kind of before we hit record, I even kind of mentioned it with Aiden O'Connell, and kind of piggybacking off of what you said. There's stuff there that you can work with. It's just a matter of, is it enough to be a quote unquote franchise quarterback? And I think for him, unfortunately, where the Raiders are going to be drafting, more than likely it's going to be Carson Beck, a Shedeur Sanders, one of those guys that's probably going to be available, and that's going to look a lot more sexy than an Aiden O'Connell. And then on the other side of it, yeah, the Antonio Pierce experiment, I was still kind of willing to be like, look, I think once give him a chance once he gets a little bit of talent in there. But the Kansas City game really kind of showed me that maybe he doesn't, I don't want to say isn't cut out for it, but maybe isn't ready to be an NFL head coach. There was a really big decision. It was in the fourth quarter. He trots his punt team out there. I think it was like 4th and 7. And I remember thinking, like, why is he punting right now? Giving the ball back to Mahomes. I think they were down 2. And then he ends up calling a timeout, which I was also like, you're going to regret losing that timeout, but okay, you're going to go for it now. And instead he put Carlson out there, who is a very good kicker, but in those conditions, he had already missed a field goal short from a shorter distance. I think it was like a 54-yarder, and this would have been, I believe, a 57-yarder. Those are the decisions that you make either when you're A, indecisive, or B, you're scared. And I'm not saying he's scared because that man does not ever look scared to me. I do think it turns into indecisiveness, and a lot of that is inexperience. And I do just wonder if, if Max Crosby would not have came out last year in the offseason and said, either you bring Antonio Pierce back or I'm requesting a trade. Who knows? I don't know how much that affected, and we never will know, but I think it is time the Raiders do have to move on from Antonio Pierce, and bring in a more experienced coach, and I think someone that a little more decisive in those moments. And in terms of this game, I think Todd Bowles might be a perfect maybe learning example for Antonio Pierce. Obviously, Todd Bowles had his moments where he didn't look great. His first time as a head coach, got back into a defensive coordinator situation, thrived, and he's done well in Tampa. And I really, so this could be an opportunity that, this isn't a death sentence for Antonio Pierce. I'm not saying I don't ever want to see him be on the head coach again. I just think maybe he was a bit over his head in this situation. In terms of this game, I really think that the Raiders have enough as well to get the job done and cover. I would not be terribly surprised if they won this game. Now, they shouldn't win this game if you're looking at the overall, kind of draft position and things like that. But I do think this probably turns into a field goal game or even a 4 or 5, 6 point game. But I think +7, you're feeling pretty good about that. The only reason I'm going to take the under is I do think if we do get closer to that 47, 48, 50, we get away from the Raiders covering. And if it gets closer to a shootout, I think Baker Mayfield's got more bullets in his gun than Aiden O'Connell does. So that's the only reason I kind of lean towards the underside of it. But would not be surprised to see, because 46.5 is essentially drawing a line in the sand. 46 points, I believe, is 46 or 47 is the average point total of every game, over the last 5-10 years. So Vegas is pretty much just kind of drawing a line in the sand. So again, this number, not ideal, but I really do like the +7. Moving on to Sunday Night Football. And this is a game that maybe 6 weeks ago we didn't think had too much importance, but a little bit of importance in this one. It is going to be an Arrowhead. The Los Angeles Chargers heading to face the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are going to be 4-point favorites. The over-under sits at 42.5. Raider Jim, your thoughts, Sunday Night Football, Chargers at Chiefs.
Yeah, two things are for sure in this one, and that is these are the two best teams in the AFC West. Kansas City is still the best, but Kansas City is, I don't know if they are tired or there's the adrenaline letdown now that the streak is over, but let's be real. We have to be honest. They're not burning it up offensively of late or the last couple. Now, this is a different week, and they're going to have to put points on the board to beat the Chargers. And that's not going to be easy because the Charger defense is really playing some good ball. Chargers are that team that doesn't know that they're not supposed to be good, it seems like. It's kind of like one or the other. It's like maybe they do know they're supposed to be good, but at the same time, it's like Harbaugh's just got these guys playing ball, and they're executing, and they're playing very, very well. I am surprised that Kansas City is a full 4-point favorite in this one, given the way the Chargers have been playing. I like the Chargers +4.5 in this one. I definitely like them to cover. Do they get the victory? I'm not going to be surprised at that, but I don't think they will. I think Kansas City's still going to win the game because Kansas City is probably not going to make any mistakes, and I think they know they can't afford to make even one mistake against the Chargers. As far as the over-under goes, I do like the over in this one because I think that the Chargers are going to come out firing, score points, but I think Kansas City's just going to match them. They're going to find a way to do it, be it schemes that they haven't been running offensively, different looks. Maybe they're going to incorporate or get Kelsey the ball a little bit more, and they're going to tell him, you got to return back to 2 seasons ago and give us one good game here, so that we can stay on top of the West and keep going. But the Chargers right now, they're in the position for the playoffs. Yeah. They're not going to win the division, but are they going to secure a position in the playoffs? They have a very good chance to do that. So again, I think they're going to cover, but I think Kansas City gets the win, and I do think it's going to go over on this one.
Yeah. Sunday night, Monday morning, looking over the schedule, I thought, you know what, the Chargers are live in this game, not just to cover whatever line that they're going to put out, but to win this game the way they have been playing. Very impressed, even though they got a lot of help from Kirk Cousins last week, but it's also what they did as well to make that happen. And then I saw the line. I put this all together, and my spidey senses are tingling. This feels like a trap to me. I feel like Vegas wants everyone to jump on the Chargers right now at +4 because it just seems so, hey, look what we got for you. Don't worry. Even if they win by a field goal, you'll still win. I don't know. There's just too much something smells off on this line. It's the only reason I'm taking Kansas City -4. I'm not buying any points or anything like that. This is the Admiral Akbar game. This is a trap. I don't want to fall into it. I've fallen into a lot of them, and who knows? Maybe this is like the double trap, and I'm the guy who's too far in my head. And there's another trap game that I'm going to walk into, but this one's an interesting line to me, so I'm just going to lay the points with Kansas City and the home team. The over/under. I don't know if there's any weather. That would, I guess, be my only concern on the over/under, but this seems again another trap. And I know that the Kansas City offense hasn't been incredible, and the Chargers offense is missing, a bunch of weapons, or at least maybe they were never even there. But you're going to tell me a game which Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes has an over/under of 42.5? So I'm going to go under. None of this makes sense. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I can make it make sense. I'm going Kansas City -4 and under 42.5 because I think all of this is a trap, and I'm going the opposite direction. So I don't know.
So you're looking at 27-13.
Yeah, exactly, and you're just like,
okay.
Oh, yeah. So again, this is a game I'm definitely not actually putting my money on. But again, it'll be very interesting to see how this all goes. And, if it does turn out to be 20-17, and I guess no, I'm going to need to get to 22-17 or whatever. And I just kind of look around and go, Admiral Akbar got me before we came out of hyperspace on this one. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. This is kind of as a gambler for as long as I have been doing it, this was one you just kind of stop, look at sideways, look around and go, no, I'm not. I know what makes sense here. I'm doing the opposite. Because as I always say, we don't make sense. We make dollars. But anyways, moving on to the other bit of, games that we'll be kind of focusing on, 3 that we'll be talking about here in depth. We're going to start with a bit of a kind of wild card matchup. 2 teams that are struggling. Well, one team that is struggling, another just doesn't look good right now. But anyways, the Atlanta Falcons, the aforementioned struggling team, they're heading to Minnesota to face the Vikings, who despite their 10-2 record or 9-3, whatever it is, just haven't been very impressive. But anyways, the Vikings are going to be 6-point favorites. The over-under sits at 45.5. 2 dome teams going at it. Raider Jim, your thoughts, Atlanta at Minnesota.
Honest to goodness, I think Atlanta is the worst first place team that I've seen in a long time. Yeah. Matter of fact, this is it. They've got to win this week because Raiders are playing Tampa Bay. Guess who they're tied with? They're the Falcons are tied with Tampa Bay. Both teams are 6-6, and wow, that is pretty much the state of the NFC South right there. That sums it up. I think Atlanta's going to come out, play another inconsistent game like they did last week against the Chargers. Minnesota is fighting. They're fighting to get, keep up with the Detroit, and they don't want to slip back another game in the loss column. I think Minnesota at home is going to come out, and they're going to play a very, very good game on both sides of the ball. They're going to shut down Atlanta. I think Atlanta will score some points, but I see Minnesota covering 5.5, no problem. And I'm going to take the over 45.5 just because I think, like I say, Minnesota, I see them getting 28 points, no problem. 31 points maybe. And Atlanta, they'll put up some points, but they're going to screw up along the way.
Yeah, this is a very well. First and foremost, when I first thought about it, this is Kirk Cousins' revenge game, right? But if you know Kirk Cousins, I feel like if there's anybody who wants revenge less than Kirk Cousins, I've never seen him on the professional. The guy's just such a nice guy. I guarantee you he's going to have nothing but glowing things to say about everyone who came in contact. And I truthfully don't think he thinks about it as a revenge game. However, I do think it's an opportunity where he is a prideful man. He wants to fight back after the debacle last week. 4 interceptions, might have been 5, but I think it was 4. And I was watching that game because I was watching football with my brother. He's a big Charger fan. And it was mind-blowing to just see Kirk Cousins essentially, oh, you want to give it back to me? I don't want it. Chargers defense is good, but they weren't doing anything crazy. Big mistakes. However, Minnesota is very inconsistent. Sam Darnold, the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's had moments where you do wonder, am I watching 2017 or 2018, 2019 Sam Darnold? And you wonder if he is going to regress or whatever that needed to be. I like Atlanta. I'm going to buy a 0.5 point the other direction and take it Atlanta plus 6.5. The other part of the Tampa thing as well, obviously they do play the Raiders this week. Tampa, I believe, has I know for a fact of all the playoff contenders, Tampa has the easiest remaining schedule, might have the easiest remaining schedule in all of football. So that's why a lot of people are high on Tampa to win the division. This is a must win for Atlanta. I think at the very least, we're going to see the best. One thing I will say about Atlanta and what they've been able to do offensively, I think they have kind of figured out a way to be the most out of Bijan Robinson. Arthur Smith seemed to just not know how to deal with Bijan Robinson. I like what they've done there, and that's also why I do like the over here. I think 2 dome teams. Another part of it too, Minnesota having a dome. Goodness, this could be such a great opportunity to, welcome an NFC South team to 15-degree weather, but at the same time, they'd have to play in it too, and I don't think they want to do that. But I do like the over in this, climate-controlled environment. And then 2 good coaches. I really do think both of these coaches, especially Kevin O'Connell, really good at what they do. So give me the over, but I do like Atlanta plus 6.5. Minnesota wins, but it's the Minnesota special, a field goal late or a interception to seal it, unfortunately, from Kirk. But moving on to arguably and probably the hottest team in all of football, the Buffalo Bills. They have won the AFC East already. I think it's the earliest the AFC East has ever been clinched, and that includes some of those Patriot years. Buffalo Bills, they are heading to Los Angeles to face the Rams. They're going to be 4.5 point favorites. The over-under sits at 49.5. I'll get this one started. This is another one where I'd love to be able to talk to an odds maker or a bookie and just wonder, do the Rams still get 3-point home field advantage default here? Because I'm almost positive we're going to see a lot of blue. There are going to be a lot of broken tables in that parking lot. Bills Mafia is going to show out, and I really do think that that's a big reason why the Bills get the job done. The Rams, I do think, are a good football team. They're just very young, and they're just very beaten up. Young in some places, old in others. Good coach, but I really do think Buffalo goes on the road. They feel at home in the climate-controlled environment. Plenty of Bills Mafia cheering them on. And Josh Allen, look, I know Josh Allen is a heavy favorite to win MVP, and he should. I just would like you all to go look at his stats versus Jalen Hurts' stats side by side. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is MVP. I'm just saying look at the stats. It's interesting to me. That's all I'm going to say. But I do like Buffalo to cover 4.5. The 49.5, I'm going to take the over just because that Bills offense is so dynamic. I mean, they were carving up a team in the snow, essentially. Let's see what they get to do in, climate controlled 72-degree weather or whatever, AC, blah, blah, blah. I do like the over, but I do like the spread more than that. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Rams, if the coach is going to have them sit and remind them and watch the game earlier in the season when they played Detroit. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be a walk for Detroit, no problem. And then the Rams just, I mean, what a battle that was. It was a fantastic battle. Lost it in overtime with a fantastic opening drive with the, first possession by Detroit. However, you said it, Buffalo, both teams were playing in the snow, but Buffalo just looked like they didn't care. I mean, some of the stuff they executed was amazing. That cute little play where he throws it to the wide receiver who bounces it with one hand, brings it in, and then flips it back to Josh Allen. So he gets recorded as throwing the pass and catching the pass and scoring a touchdown. That was quite amazing. And I think they're just going to come out and execute again. I think the Rams defense is going to stick with them for a while. I think the Rams offense is going to be able to execute a little bit, but not enough to win the game. I like Buffalo covering on this one, also 4.5. And like you, I just think there's going to be points on the board because I can see Buffalo rolling up 35. No problem. They're just a machine right now. And they are only looking forward. They're not looking back. And if you want to be the top team in the AFC right now, the road's going through Buffalo. So I think Bill's got this one, no problem. And I also agree with you that it's that Vegas situation. There is no more home game.
Yeah.
For the, maybe for the Chargers and sometimes for the Rams, but even it's still not really. It seems like more and more and more when they show these crowd scenes, it's either 50-50 or the visiting team is better supported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one for the Rams. Mainly, they'll have to kind of keep their eye on what's going on in our next game, as that NFC West is a cluster. Anyways, the Seattle Seahawks, they are heading to the desert to face the Arizona Cardinals. Just a heads up, Seattle 7-5, Arizona 6-6. Rams also 6-6. So huge for both of these teams, even the Rams as well. But the Cardinals will be 2.5-point favorites, and the over-under will sit at 44. Raider Jim, I'll give you the first bite at this apple. Seahawks at Cardinals in a big NFC West showdown.
Something real simple to look at, and this tells you how close this game is going to be. And I'm surprised. I am really surprised that it's 2.5 and not just a pick 'em on this one, because Seattle at 7-5, as you said, Arizona 6-6. Points for Seattle 272, Arizona 266. Points against Seattle 265, Arizona 259. I mean, it doesn't get more even than that. Arizona, unfortunately, too inconsistent. I thought really that they would come out and be the guys to beat in the West. They had a chance, but hasn't been the case. 1 week they're on, next week they're off. And this week, playing at home, I think is going to play to their advantage. I like the 2.5 for that. I think it's going to I don't think you're going to see that separation in the crowd. I think this is going to be a true hometown game, home field advantage. I like the Cardinals going out, the offense executing. Seattle is going to put some points on the board, but Arizona's defense is going to have to come up, play tough. And again, they have been doing not too bad. Seattle, they're just, again, they're 7-5, but more inconsistency for both teams. I like Arizona in this one. Give me Arizona covering at the 2.5, but go over 44 on this one because I think it's going to be more like a 27-23 game.
Yeah, I like the over in this one as well. I do think we're going to see some points being scored. These two teams, we are week 14?
Yeah.
I still don't know if either of these teams are good or bad. I don't know. There's so many times this year I've been like, yes, the Cardinals are a good football team. And then you see them next week and you're like, what was I thinking? And then the Seahawks are a bad football team. And then you see them beat the Niners. And I know the Niners are who they are, but they were fully healthy at the time. these are two teams that it's almost like a coin flip type situation. And of course, you see a -2.5 point spread for me. I'm just going to be like, where can I put my money where I don't have to buy a point or a half a point? I mean, that's just my thinking in this situation. So I'm going to take Arizona as well. It's a big game for Arizona. If they can win this, they'll have a kind of pole position for the NFC West. And that would be huge for Kyler and, really the entire organization that has had to answer a lot of questions the last year or two after the Cliff Kingsbury incident or estrangement and all that stuff. It's really, really interesting to see how this game's going to go. Personally, no live bullets or no actual bets on this one, just because I don't have a pulse of either of these teams, but for the sake of the podcast, Arizona 2.5 and then over 44. So, and I know, so that is all the games that we are going to cover in depth. And I know what everyone out there is thinking. How could we have forgotten the game of the week? I'm sorry, it was an oversight. Jacksonville, Tennessee. Sorry, we're just going to have to cover you next week. We'll wrap that barn burner up, but Tennessee is going to be the home team. They're going to be 3.5 point favorites. The over-under, holy cow, 39.5. Slow down, folks. Then on the other side, Aaron Rodgers and his friends, or teammates, I should say, the New York Jets, they are heading to Miami to face the Dolphins. Dolphins are going to defrost in South Beach, and they're going to be 6-point favorites. The over-under sits at 45. And finally, the Chicago Bears, they're heading to Santa Clara to face the San Francisco 49ers, who are going to be 3.5 point favorites. The over-under is 45.5. Raider Jim, and your thoughts on any of these absolute barn burner of matchups?
Well, the Jets bring in a disgruntled wide receiver from the Raiders because he was pouting and, kicking a can down the street. So they reunite him with Aaron Rodgers. They fire a coach. They fire a general manager. They still only have 3 wins. And Aaron Rodgers can only say after the game, and sometimes it is a little bit my fault. Something to that effect. It's like, dude, it is all your fault. I mean, he threw for less than 200 yards again. I think I saw his rating is like 48 something. He's the second lowest in football right now. Sunday after the game, there was rumblings that they might bench him, and by Monday morning, he must have called somebody in the front office and said, "You retract that immediately. I am the starter." And so, of course, Monday it was, no, he's our guy. He's our guy. It's like, well, okay, well, if that's who you want leading you to battle, that's what they thought about Davy Crockett. What can I say? Jacksonville and Tennessee, I have nothing to say about that. And Chicago couldn't have come along at a better time for the 49ers. Boy, do the 49ers need this. Unfortunately, for the 49ers, now that the Bears have had the change at head coach, sometimes that's a motivator for the team. And they may come out and look at that beat-up San Francisco 49er team who's not ruling the NFC and go, we got this. We got this. We can take care of these guys. I don't think it'll happen, but I would not watch it, but I'll definitely be keeping a track on the score because I think it's going to be not too bad of a game after all. I hope San Francisco rights the ship. I just do. But that Miami game, I hope Miami takes care of business soundly, and then let's see what the Jets have to say going into Week 15.
Yeah. It's really hard for Aaron Rodgers to bench himself because, let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers is running that franchise. He has been running that franchise, and he's been running it into the ground. Now, granted, it was already on a downward trajectory before he got there. He just really pushed down on that throttle. It's one of those things where he is kind of turning into like that meme of just like kind of like a walking meme of where everything's on fire, and he's like, this is fine. And it also helps. I'm sure Jets fans will be clamoring. I saw my first sponsored ad for it, but don't worry, folks. Aaron Rodgers' Netflix movie or show or documentary is coming out, so you can figure out how he, beat Father Time to get back from his Achilles injury last year to do. I can only imagine what he says this year was going to be in that documentary. And then for us to kind of see it 14 weeks in, we're going to get a little chuckle out of that one. But I tell you, Jacksonville and Tennessee, they did something that I haven't seen too often, and they made me not care about a game with a spread of -3.5. I mean, -3.5 is right up my alley with that stuff. Could not care less about that one. And it's really the fault of those two teams. And I agree with you. I do think Chicago is very live, especially 3.5. Very easily see them lose by a field goal, but still play well. I think Caleb Williams, I think Caleb Williams is going to be just fine once everything kind of settles down, and hopefully they make the right hire. No guarantee there, but hopefully they can kind of settle things down, take a deep breath, and move on to next year, because I do think I thought he played well on Thanksgiving, or at least towards the end. But it's going to be a very, very interesting one. Luckily, we didn't leave too much off. Again, sorry to our Jacksonville and Titan fans, but I have a feeling they don't want us to talk about them either. So, but with that being said, Raider Jim, your final thoughts for this episode of the podcast.
Hey, I always like to look outside of the professional world, and so I'm going to give a special shout out to some local high school girls, the Modern Day Catholic High School girls flag football team, who won CIF. And I believe this is only their second or third season that they've been playing. So congratulations to them. They got a real hotshot quarterback over there. I actually got to see her warming up once, and I was amazed at the trajectory that she can and the way she throws the ball. So she's only a sophomore. She's going to be around for a couple more years, but boy, can she sling it. But congratulations to them. And it's nice to see the emergence of girls flag football come up all over the place, and it's just a wonderful thing. So hope that continues. And then also, of course, you brought it up the week before Thanksgiving. Folks, you're going to hear it from us week in and week out now through the end of the year. It is the holiday time. We all get together. We get together with family and friends, work events, whatever holiday event you're at. In San Diego, they're doing holiday nights again this year. Please, 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 for the sake of yourselves, the family, and for those people around you, be responsible. Rideshare, Uber, Lyft, public transit, just don't drink and drive. It's just not worth it.
Amen. And, it's kind of that's where I'm going as well, as we do enter the holiday season. And then, of course, last night, I am a hockey fan, and it's about it's got to be coming up on 3 or 4 months now. The Gaudreau family lost 2 of their own through drunk driving. And last night, the 2 teams that Johnny Gaudreau played for, they played against each other. It was fantastic. And there was an interview with Guy Gaudreau, who is, of course, the father. And again, if you need a reminder of what that does, you look at his two young daughters. I think a third is on the way, unfortunately. Right. It's great, but everything. That's kind of your reminder that, maybe you get home safe, but if you don't, you could really, really ruin a lot of things. And in this day and age, as Raider Jim said, it's so easy now. I mean, to the point of, I'm telling you this right now, if the worst case scenario, pop your trunk, put your keys in the trunk, recline your seat, pass out. I promise you, if a cop for whatever reason rolls up on you, and unless you're an absolute a-hole, he will take care of you as best as possible. I don't know the legality of it, but if you put your keys in the trunk, you can at least explain your way out of it. Again, because I think technically you're supposed to leave your keys outside. Shouldn't leave your keys outside while you sleep everywhere, but do not drink and drive. We live in a world where you can pull something up on your phone and someone can be at your house or your place or wherever in 15 minutes and get you home safely. If you can go out and afford to drink enough to get drunk, you can afford a ride home. And if the reason why you don't want to do it is because you don't want the hassle of driving in the morning, maybe you need to readjust your priorities as a human. But with that being said, Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. Talk to you all very soon. Take care.